This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode number 248, Commerce with Drupal. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our thoughts are with the Drupal community as the world continues to fight COVID-19. On today's show, we're chatting with Matt and Ryan from Centaro. Before we do that, let's talk to our hosts and see what's going on. Steven, what's going on with you?
Hey guys. Oh, not too much. Things are opening up here in the state of Rhode Island, which is nice to see. Although the traffic's getting busier around. I don't know if you've noticed that. It was nice to have no traffic anywhere ever, but it's getting busy. By last week, I've been running Arch Linux on my machines here for the last 6 months, but I never installed it myself. I was using Endeavor OS, which kind of does the build and install for you. So this week I did my first vanilla Arch install, which was fun. So
that's so weird because one of my coworkers today was talking about Arch Linux, and that we started talking about Linux machines, and I was like, "That's amazing. Say more."
So it was fun. I thought I've always heard these things like, and it's like this badge of honor in Linux when you install Arch for yourself the first time, but I actually found it not very hard with the right instructions and the right studying ahead of time. And I've gotten to the point only that I have like the basic OS, the machine boots. I'm now at the point that I have to take the next step, which is like install things so it can actually do something. Like my network drivers to get the wireless working, a login utility. I'm going to put on a Windows tiling manager and things like that so I could actually use the machine. But it was my first step, and it was just lots of fun.
So we actually, that conversation led into us finding a plugin library. I don't exactly know what you call it on Linux, but that would mirror a lot of the Mac OS gestures. So I was like, someday when I'm really bored, maybe I'll look at installing and configuring this.
Yeah. It's probably not the good first step into Linux, but once you get used to Linux, it's probably a good way to go. Nick, I don't think you've gone down that path yet, right? You're muted.
I'm not. Am I still muted?
No, nope. He's good now.
Yeah, I clicked it. I think it delayed unmuting. No, I've never installed Arch Linux. I might someday, but I mean Ubuntu works for me. I don't see any reason to.
Once the Legos run out, he'll switch to Arch Linux. So in the vein of new things, I actually we started using a new social media platform called Sendable, and I've been in Sendable for a couple of days now, kind of setting up some things. And if you're looking for a platform to manage your social media, Sendable's pretty cool. They've got some pretty interesting tools, queue management, schedule management, that sort of thing. So, been enjoying switching from the tool that we were previously using to that. Nick's saying that he needs the link. It's down in the resources section at the bottom of the notes. We'll put the link in the show notes for you folks, and you can check it out. It's actually pretty reasonably priced too. It was surprising to me. I don't know if you guys are doing a lot of social media posting, or if you've looked at prices for some of these tools, but some of these tools wanted like $50 to $100 a month for social media management, and I was like, wow. I'm like, that's crazy. We looked at Hootsuite, which was I think $29, and then Sendable comes in. There's a $16 version and then like a $24 version. So pretty reasonably priced for the amount of features that it has. Nick, what's going on?
You don't just like manage those accounts during the bathroom breaks?
No. So we were using a tool.
Toilet paper might be more expensive.
Yeah, we were using like a tool, and it was just kind of like didn't have any features, where it was like basically just like you were just typing into like a text editor. And I'm like, this is awful. So we switched to this, and it has a lot more features and helps you manage things a lot better. So no, we're not doing individual accounts on somebody's cell phone. That would be disaster.
Not very hygienic.
No. Nick, what's going on with you?
This week, I mean, things are starting to finally settle down into the new normal. Massachusetts is starting to open up again, so I'm keen to see how that's going to work.
Did you steal that from your governor?
Steal what from my governor?
The term "the new normal." That's the last phase of his reopening plan.
Oh yeah, that's
the
true.
New normal.
I read through all the documents. Some of the details felt a little light. I'm interested to see what kind of guidance comes through in the next few weeks. But yeah, I mean, on the home front, I got some outdoor rated speakers, and so I think I'm going to set up my last audio zone outside.
Who makes those, Nick? Just out of curiosity.
These ones I bought from HTD, which I think stands for Home Theater Direct.
Interesting.
They're a little bit bigger than I expected.
Do they look like faux rocks, or are they just like speakers?
No, there's certainly ones like that, but I think that's kind of tacky, so I'm just going to mount them under the soffit. They look like normal desk speakers almost.
I heard there's some serious judgment toward Picozzi there. You and your tacky rock speakers.
I don't have any outdoor speakers, so he's got one. He's got one up on me. It's interesting. You know, you should definitely test that with some like heavy metal. I'm sure your neighbors would appreciate that. All right. So moving into our next segment, let's introduce our guests. With us today, we have Matt Glaman, the product lead at Centaro. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the product lead at Centaro. I help lead it. I help lead our product development, and I'm a co-maintainer of the 2.x branch for Drupal Commerce.
Fabulous. And with him, we have Ryan Shrazama, the CEO of Centaro. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm ready to cross-talk and yuck it up here. I've been involved in Drupal for a long time with UberCard, Drupal Commerce, Commerce Guys, blah, blah, blah. And today, of course, focused on the sales and marketing at Centaro. Some project management still in development as well. And then trying to fit in, make the time there for Drupal Association work as well as one of the board members.
Fabulous. So before we get into our primary topic, which is going to be talking about commerce, let's jump into some stories. Nick, I think you're leading off.
Yeah. So our first story this week is some good news. There was a private equity firm that was looking to purchase the .org rights. So they were looking to take it over and basically resell all the existing .orgs for a profit. And it looks like ICANN prevented that sale. So .orgs will remain mostly nonprofit organization domains. So it's a win. There's a link in the show notes to the Electronic Frontier Foundation article about it. So it's a quick read. Some good news.
The EFF is great. I hear so many good things about those guys.
Yes.
Yeah, they're pretty stellar.
Cool. Ryan, I know this is not normal that we have a guest that provides a story. But you have a story, and we're going to let you talk about it. Go for it.
Yes. I was actually really encouraged. Yesterday, I shared an article in the Wall Street Journal that was kind of following up on a terrorist attack at Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. I grew up in Pensacola on and off, and would love going there to watch the Blue Angels practice and visit the museums, among other things. So that story was of high interest to me, and I was thrilled to see that once again Apple has resisted attempts to kind of compel or cudgel them with terrorism as an excuse into compromising the integrity of the iPhone encryption software. So this happened in the past, I think multiple times in the past. Anytime a case comes up where prosecutors think they need access to encrypted data on iPhones, they basically go to the press and try to make Apple look like these nefarious actors for just trying to maintain the integrity of end-to-end encryption, which is a good thing. And it's happening again. Obviously, they weren't going to the courts. They weren't trying to use legal means to compel Apple to comply. It's just a bit of muckraking that makes them appear to side with the terrorists, when in fact, who they're siding with is us. Because just as soon as there's a backdoor in those devices, we know who's going to be using that backdoor against American citizens, whether it's external or internal actors. So kudos to Apple. And that's actually why I'm an Apple fan. I mean, always just appreciated their focus on customer privacy, encryption, that kind of stuff.
They lead. People don't realize how much further ahead they are in privacy than the Android phones and the Google. I mean, Google is set up to just take your stuff, and at least Apple is really. They probably could go a little further, but they really have gone a long way in terms of privacy. Your FaceTime chats are end-to-end encrypted. You don't even get that in Zoom right today. So it's just so much that they've done great.
Yeah. I think they deserve more praise for that in general. The other big tech companies aren't on the map. Their entire business model is built around selling your personal information.
Exactly.
Apple's the only one that we pay too much to for hardware in order to have more than an illusion of privacy, it seems.
Yeah, it's the one thing that makes me consider switching to Apple.
Wait. What was that, Nick?
It says that makes me consider. So, although if
I think he's referring to a phone, though, right?
Yeah, just a phone. I mean, if there's a good Linux phone with, I will switch to that first, probably.
Hang tight; they're on their way.
Yeah, I can't wait.
A Linux phone coming to a store in 2025. Nick,
so the next story that we have is back on the Drupal front. So Drupal 9 is coming out in 2 weeks.
What?
Yeah, it feels
2 weeks.
It feels like we've been talking about it forever, and now all of a sudden it's here. So there is a project put together by a couple of different companies, I think Pronovix and Palantir, called Drupal Rector, which helps provide automated patches to fix deprecated code in modules. So with that project, I think we can expect Commerce 3.x for Drupal 9 in a couple of weeks.
But the beauty is that it's Commerce 2.x for Drupal 9, right?
Yeah.
Just remove the deprecated code and it's ready, baby.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. But it looks like it. Honestly, it does fix a lot of modules very quickly. There's, it'll fix L functions to be proper and those kinds of things. So if you have a relatively small amount of deprecated code, it should be a relatively easy switch. I mean, we'll see in the next couple of months how true that holds, but everything's pointing to a much more streamlined update than any previous major version release. So I'm very excited. I think it'll be interesting to see how this turns out.
For those of you watching on video, Matt just got up and ran out of the room with a panicked look on his face. I'm wondering if Commerce is ready for Drupal 9.
Let's say we are. We mostly are. The bigger thing is ensuring all of our contrib and helping the ecosystem get to that.
Right. Sure. Right. That's right. Because it's not just Commerce, right? It's all those supporting modules.
Yep. Which honestly, there aren't that many breaking changes for Drupal 9. It's a lot of little ones, and the community's been really good at tackling that. So I think the hardest part will be cat herding actual tagged releases versus actually getting commits of fixes.
We can also put a shameless plug in here for Matt's upgrade status library that will go through and tell you all the problems with your.
That's Gabor's. That's not my doing. It uses an underlying library, but a lot of that is a lot of other folks.
All right, we'll give both of you a shameless plug then. A lot of great work is happening to make sure everybody can be Drupal 9 ready. And on that same note, the last story we want to share today is that there is a new Drupal brand that is ready for the Drupal 9 release. Some people may have noticed it. Oddly enough, I never thought that many people paid attention to favicons until in one day the the Drupal.org favicon changed to the new brand, and everybody was like, what happened? What happened? What website am I on? Am I on the right website? Like, what's happening right now? And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, it's new branding. That's cool. But
it did make me a little sad to say farewell to DrupalCon.
Yeah, I can understand that. But I thought, I thought the new brand was good. It was a little more generalized, a little bit more versatile, I think, than probably previous brand efforts. There'll be a link in the show notes that our listeners can check out to see the new brand. There's a style guide and everything. It's pretty great. There's opinions on social media about it, but I think it's great. You can hit me up.
I haven't seen these opinions. Are there any dumpster fires?
No dumpster fires. The biggest opinion that people are saying is they're comparing it to the Scream painting, which is interesting.
I don't see it.
Yeah, well, yeah, after the show, you can go through social media and you can find all those posts. Anyway, moving right along, let's jump into our primary topic for today, and we're going to talk about commerce with Drupal. So, I think first and foremost, seeing as we have some may call him Mr. Commerce himself with us, Ryan, could you give us just a brief history of commerce in Drupal?
Sure. The brief history of time. In the beginning, there was an e-commerce module developed by Matt Westgate. If anybody knows who that is, of course, I'm going to get his title wrong. I can never remember if he or Jeff was the CEO versus president, but whatever. Matt founded Lullabot, and e-commerce was the e-commerce project for a while. I did some early e-commerce consulting for Nathan's Famous Hot Dogs once upon a time, and the company that I was working at, selling restaurant equipment online, needed something more, and basically needed the OS Commerce feature set ported into Drupal, and that became UberCart. So I started UberCart in 2006. We developed UberCart for some years. Eventually, whenever Drupal 7 came around, wanted to re-architect the whole system to be more Drupal native around the fieldable entities system, taking advantage of modules like views and rules, the entity API, and the like. So we developed Drupal Commerce, and this basically I led the development from 2010 till Commerce 2.x, whenever I handed the baton to Bojan Jovanovic, which also happened around the time that Platform.sh was becoming bigger, and then eventually we, separated the Drupal Commerce side of Commerce guys out, and continued to develop and launch Commerce 2.x. I think what was our beta release, Matt? Was that at DrupalCon Dublin in 2016? Yeah, we launched Sport Overmyer. Yeah, and then we had our big 2.0 release party at DrupalCon Vienna. And I guess we're up to like 2.18 now. Is coming out next month or something. So yeah, so really, just continuing to mature the project, mature the platform, and keep growing out the support options, the community option, all this to just like continuing to push it forward and really, expand the feature set in a way that we never could before now, because we've already touched on Drupal 9 upgrades here in this episode. Like literally every other time, we had to completely rewrite the entire framework. When I wrote UberCart for Drupal 5, when Drupal 6 came out, rewrite. When Drupal 7 came out, rewrite again from scratch because of fieldable entities and all that stuff. When Drupal 8 came out, rewrite from scratch again because we now have to convert to object-oriented code. And I mean, like it's hard to even estimate myself just how far behind that makes us relative to our peers, these other open source e-commerce projects who've been around just as long. Magento, they're enormous, right? Because they didn't have to reinvent their platform every couple of years like we did. So just imagine like what that's going to mean for the Drupal 9 life cycle. You know, Drupal Commerce is Drupal 9 ready already, and we just get to continue focusing on feature expansion and not refactoring the entire massive code base.
Did you find during that refactoring that it was a benefit to the end result, that you had an opportunity to clean things up and rethink strategy?
Oh yeah. So I mean, on the one hand, there are gremlins in the Commerce 1.x code base. Right. Open up the Commerce Cart module and go to the Add to Cart form builder. I think it's like 1,000 lines long. I may have put too much in there. And why? Well, part of the reason it's so big is because we always had that separation between a product display node and the product entity. Whereas in Commerce 2.x, we said, well, look, we need to be more inclusive of how many entities we define internally in the Commerce framework, and just have a product entity with product variation entities, reference them together and make that just a unit out of the box. That simplifies add to cart form building for sure. That's one small example, but I mean, just generally speaking, having a more expressive code base, just completely changed the nature of the framework. I mean, I could talk way too long about just how different it is and how advantageous it's been. But needless to say, I don't look back at all. I still maintain Commerce 1.x, and I much prefer to be working in Drupal 8.
So Matt, I'm curious, what's the current status of Drupal Commerce today, and are there any really big initiatives coming up that you're excited about?
So for the initiatives, one thing that we've been really working on is API first. Just as Drupal core had an API first initiative that allowed it to work with like JSON API and GraphQL in a much more performant way. We've been working on a lot of API first items, such as releasing the Commerce API module to help folks build decoupled front ends. And as of late, we're also working on, I've been working on improving our payments API and giving better support for what we consider to be quote unquote offsite payment gateways like PayPal. And now, before there used to be a distinction between somewhere you put your credit card on the website or off the website. But with modern payment gateways and new JavaScript fanciness, that line is really blurred. So we've been working on improving our payment API to help support these more robust payment gateway integrations. And just general, like Ryan said, Drupal 9's coming. We just had to fix deprecations, and we can just keep fixing bugs and adding more fluid features instead of worrying about adapting to a new system. So that's really exciting.
What would you say?
I think it's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to point out too that we have finally achieved, at long last, a regular release schedule. So for folks that aren't familiar, for the first year and a half, we basically had a release a month. Now we've basically stabilized the core framework to move toward like a release per quarter. Just trying to make that whole release cycle more predictable. Last I looked, we were up over 11,000 sites and counting, and it only serves them to be more predictable because these all represent people who are building their businesses on our software and are dependent kind of on us as responsible maintainers for their livelihoods. So definitely don't want to screw that up.
What would be the maybe you could just describe the typical use case or the best use case where Drupal Commerce shines the best? What does that site look like?
I'll go first, and Matt can chip in if I forget something or misspeak. But it's a hard question to answer because on the one hand, you can literally take our demo out of the box and start selling without any customization or configuration at all. right? If all you're doing is, I don't know, making soap in your bathtub, Edward Norton Fight Club style, and selling it on the internet, you could do that, just with Drupal Commerce out of the box. But that doesn't represent like a competitive advantage where Drupal Commerce shines relative to the broader e-commerce industry, if you will. Like there's a strong case to be made that Tyler should be selling his soaps through Shopify if all he wants is the base feature set of Shopify, because then he doesn't incur the overhead cost of having to maintain open source software. There's a reason people use SaaS. So when we think about like when must you or when ought you consider Drupal Commerce to really take advantage of it, it's those what I call like the intersection of multis. Is it a multi-store scenario that requires multiple price lists for different kinds of customers? Cool. You literally can't do that anywhere else without custom development. But we handle that use case out of the box. Is it a different checkout flow for different kinds of products or different groups of customers? Cool. We do that out of the box. You can't get that anywhere else. So it's those kinds of scenarios where you really have what I would say like one or more complex customer journeys complete with, impacts on product availability, product pricing, checkout flow configuration, payment options, etc. It's that complicated use case that in a historical case, you would have had to basically pair multiple pieces of software together. So Sport Obermeyer, I mentioned earlier, was our first big Commerce 2.x site launch. They're still on Commerce 2.x today and continue to expand their feature set. Well, that site that we built for them was what we call a platform consolidation use case, where they had multiple different pieces of web software. I think, Matt, was it like a Drupal 6 SuperCard site, a Magento site, and the bespoke Ruby on Rails app or something?
It was an UberCart site. There was a Shopify site, and then a B2B e-commerce platform.
Yeah. So they end up putting all these things side by side because there hasn't been a single platform that had the kind of like the power under the hood to support them all under one roof. And this is especially true when you talk about these mixed channel sales. So most businesses probably have like completely different business units if they sell B2B and direct to consumer or B2C. Typically like those are very different sales processes, different pricing schemes, different fulfillment methods. You might be paying on invoice terms instead of paying immediately with a credit card. The more complicated scenarios, of course, have multiple price lists, and who you are, which prices you're access to, is dependent on sales volume or who you know. and so like often what happens is those companies just have different heads of departments buying different pieces of software, and nary the twain shall meet. And that's just not necessary anymore with Drupal Commerce. And I think too, when you consider multi-store, multi-domain, multilingual, multi-currency, like these are vectors that other platforms like kind of play on, but none do them all. A good classic example I always use was my friend ran a Shopify Plus company, and he had to run WordPress on a subdomain to do his content marketing, and then one Shopify Plus instance, $2,000 a month for his US store, and another one for his UK store because he couldn't even have them both in one site. Like that's kind of crazy, and that kind of thing, like Drupal itself, like does natively, right? Multi-domain, well, natively, the domain module, the translation system, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's a real competitive advantage that I think, Drupal agencies of any size can go pitch Drupal Commerce with confidence to global brands, people that do cross-border commerce, so that are trying to integrate their channels into a single sales platform. I know, John, you have a case study that basically does that, and I don't know if that's something you can share about on the call, but like, I know you've done it. We've done it for others as well. And ideally that's a story we continue to see popularized in the Drupal community.
I know one thing I'll let John go.
Oh, that's right. I was going to say, yeah, we've talked about Leica Geosystems before, and their commerce platform. I've done a couple talks on it. You can go to Oomp's website and read the case study on it. we can hear from Matt, and you guys can read the case study later on. We'll put the link in the show notes.
And to build on what Ryan said, like customer journeys, we had a Drupal 7 Commerce 1.x user that had 10 different checkout flows and purchasing endeavors that a customer could go on. And that kind of hit a breaking point, was one of the inspirations for the checkout system in Commerce 2.x. And when we finally ported them, I believe we had 15 to 17 different checkout flows. So when a customer went to buy this software as a service product, based on which version they're purchasing, where they're from, if they're doing a free trial, if they're doing an upgrade, they received a different checkout experience. And all that was possible by just using the out-of-the-box systems in Drupal Commerce and creating like Drupal's plugin systems. So when you have those really complex needs, it helps you adapt the software to those business requirements instead of changing your business requirements.
So one of the questions that I had as you were mentioning kind of the history of Centaro and Commerce and Drupal, Ryan, is you mentioned Platform.sh and Commerce Guys. I'm curious if you can expand a little bit on what that process included. How did Commerce Guys get integrated with Platform.sh and then eventually split off into Centaro?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think it's a story that we're still unfolding because CommerceGuys.com does not yet have the long-planned modal redirect to Centaro.io. We're getting there. But the basic idea is that I started Commerce Guys in 2009, and it was just me and literally two guys in Jackson, Michigan, and we were just doing Drupal Commerce and UberCart consulting at the time. We merged with a French team out of a joint Ruby on Rails / Drupal dev shop in Paris to kind of reform Commerce Guys headquartered there. And that's where we began raising venture capital, building out the team, investing in commerce kickstart development, and all that stuff. And, as things go, right, when venture capital is involved, you have to be pursuing a product strategy that's going to create value, that exceeds the amount of money that those investors have put in for them to remain happy. We had a few experiments in product design that kind of failed to launch, but Platform.sh did launch. It did succeed, and it has continued to scale marvelously. And the team's over 150 people now today. But what happened was, in order for them to really take off as Platform.sh, and in order for Drupal Commerce to really take off, to launch on Drupal 8 and to get the investment it needed, we needed to separate those businesses because you had a fundamental conflict. On the one hand, as a business, we needed to scale recurring revenue, which Platform.sh was that channel. So all of the best people and best resources were put behind developing that SaaS. But at the same time, the fact that SaaS was attached to Drupal Commerce was holding it back, because one of the big channels that Platform.sh opened up was, of course, the Magento channel, where they became, this cloud provider for Magento websites. That couldn't happen in the same way so long as they were known as the Drupal Commerce hosting platform. But also look at it from the Drupal Commerce side. We needed to build a business model and a financial model around dramatically increasing our investment in the open source side of things, getting more people devoted to product development on the framework itself, and then also being able to partner with companies that may have had competing hosting services or other DevOps services or the like. So that unbundling helped us both out in different ways and allowed us each to focus on what we're good at, find new sales avenues, etc. And then we always knew whenever we split out as Commerce Guys, we wanted to rebrand. It just took some time to make that happen. Not the least of which is because, have you tried to invent a name and find a domain name that's not taken? I swear, every other one, and I don't know what your rating is on this podcast, every other one was either an antidepressant or a venereal disease. Everything. I tried a lot of names. I never knew that existed. And so eventually we landed on Centaro. This is based on the Serbian word for center, because we were riffing on this idea of core, of kernel, of the central nervous system of a digital commerce platform. For us, that's Centaro. Ultimately, Centaro Commerce is kind of our product vision. We'll get into that, I guess, in a minute. But that's actually what it was based on. And then we rolled with a bull logo because I love steak and I carvings of bulls when I see them. And so I sent my designer a picture of this bull carving from an aged imported Scottish beef restaurant in Belgrade. I said, I love this. And she said, I gotcha. And she basically paired this random carving with I guess it's kind of like a GitLab Firefox feed kind of a logo style. And that's where the Centaro bull was born. Which throws a lot of people off, right? Because centaurs are half horse, half man. Mm-hmm. We aren't Mintaro.
So it has absolutely nothing to do with taking the bull by the horns.
Nope.
All right.
But it does have something to do with the bull market, right? Drupal Commerce is a bull market. Yes.
There you go. You got it here first, folks.
We put the bull in your commerce platform. No, never mind. That's not good.
So is Centaro the parent company that Platform and Commerce Guys are sitting under, or is Centaro Platform.sh completely separate now?
Yeah, we're completely separate. In 2016, I basically acquired the Commerce Guys business from my former partners and investors. And so 2016, February 1 is what we kind of consider to be the new founding dates. I had Matt, of course, and then Bojan Jovanovic as partners in that endeavor. And, we've since scaled out and grown the business since then. And, but still just completely focused on Drupal Commerce and, ultimately building our own products and services around the platform.
So what other products and services do you have that come out of Centaro?
A couple of things, and I'll lay the intro out and then hand it over to Matt, I guess. The main thing is, I don't need to over-explain. We have a couple of things going on. I'll leave it at that. If you want to know why we ruled out other things, then I'm happy to get into it. But basically, if you consider being a merchant, all right, you are a non-technical person, or maybe you're even a CIO or a CTO at a larger merchant. When you're buying e-commerce software, 9 times out of 10, you're thinking about buying it anyways, right? Not building it. And when you're buying it, you expect to see certain things like support, right? Like guarantees that if I choose to launch on this e-commerce platform, it's not going to crash and burn my business because I've got millions of dollars in sales on the line. And so one of the things that we offer is a support platform. It's just called Centaro Support. And we actually administer that through a private Stack Overflow team. We weren't exactly sure how to build this thing, but Stack Overflow launched teams last year where you can basically create a private, organization within Stack Overflow and use SSO to invite people into it. They conceived of it as being a way to allow companies to start doing internal support. We saw it as an opportunity to use a familiar platform for developers to basically invite other developers in for a monthly fee to do question and answer in that kind of an environment. And the advantage, of course, there is that we can guarantee that we'll see everything and respond to everything, whereas in various community support channels, it's a crapshoot whether or not we happen to be on the right website at the right time to see a question come through. Obviously, we pair that still with dedicated community support. Matt runs Slack office hours twice a week. Jonathan does as well, one of our Commerce 2.x co-maintainers. But then kind of like the big thing that we've been building toward is what we call Centaro Commerce. And this is something that I'll say that when we first separated from Platform.sh, we did not expect our SaaS offering to be a full e-commerce platform. We expected to launch smaller tools in the $5, $10, $25 a month range that basically were add-ons to Drupal Commerce. Some people might remember us talking about Centaro Toolbox and Centaro Insights in the past. Mm-hmm. But what we realized was one, people didn't really want the tools. They just wanted the support that we were giving as a result of it. So I said, okay, cool. Toolbox can now become secondary to support. But then again, thinking like a merchant, even if people value the features of open source software, when people choose to run open source software, they're often looking for it to be managed by the vendor. It's not an uncommon story, right? You look at MongoDB or other tools. I mean, that's hardly the only one. That's just the first one that comes to mind. People are looking for a way to get that managed by the vendor. And that's something that we felt that we were uniquely positioned to provide, not in the sense that like we'll have a Drupal Commerce like Shopify go and, pay $25 and get a store, but rather for us it was playing uniquely to Drupal and Drupal Commerce's strengths, as Matt mentioned, as an API platform. So Centaro Commerce is actually just a headless commerce SaaS, right? So you buy it, then you're getting Drupal Commerce as a service, but it's the backend. And what you get is a JSON API you go then build your front end on top of. And of course, we can offer, reference applications that integrate with it because it's just using JSON API. And I guess we could theoretically support GraphQL if we wanted. I know, Matt, I think you've done some testing in that direction, but the big idea is just for larger companies who don't want to take on the maintenance burden of open source software and actually don't really want Drupal in the front end anyways, which is a common story. Right? Decoupling is becoming more and more popular, both as a scalability strategy as well as a usability strategy, and also just like a hiring strategy. I mean, a lot of companies find it a lot easier to hire a JavaScript front-end developer than they do a full-stack back-end developer. And so this is kind of the niche, if you will, that we're trying to fit here with this product. Matt, I don't know what other spin you'd put on it. I know I'm kind of rambling, but
it's just that it's a headless e-commerce platform that lets folks do multi-tenant e-commerce stores or multi-tenancy. Sorry, I fluff words. So just multi-tenancy. It means you can have multiple brands in one platform. You can have multiple physical locations that you shop from. In the show notes, I will provide a link that links to our front-end demo that lets you pick between the US store, the German store, and a UK store and see like different pricing. So the site actually has euros, English pounds, and US dollars and lets you go through that. And the benefit there is a lot of, like Ryan said, like the CIO or the CTO wants to just buy something because the marketing firms, in my opinion, when I think of a marketing department, marketing firm, they aren't just SEO folks or social media folks. They're JavaScript developers. So you can just buy this platform, throw it at your marketing team, and they can build your various front ends for you. And we can provide a solution for those companies.
It's a bit of like a delicate balance, right? Because on the one side, we're trying to skate where the puck is going from an industry standpoint. Headless commerce is still very much a buzzword. It's so buzzwordy, in fact, that like half of BigCommerce's website talks about headless commerce and they know nothing about it, right? Like they know they need to be talking about it, but what does that mean, right? Like I've seen people talk about like headless commerce, meaning you put Drupal in front of your BigCommerce. And I'm like, no, that's just a bad choice. Like that's not headless anything unless you're like having a headless Drupal in front of BigCommerce. And then why don't you just have a headless app in front of BigCommerce? Anyways, so like people don't really understand it yet. But the reality is like just having a purpose-built e-commerce API server that's integrated into your systems on the back end gives you a robust API to build whatever you want to on the front end. Like it is what people want to do. And from the largest organizations that we serve down to the smallest, like they see value in it. But on the same, like on the other hand, like we also support a massive open source audience, and we can't we want to balance the concerns, right? So we can't just say, well, Drupal Commerce as a module set for Drupal will no longer have a front end. Like that's not a tenable solution, right? So in the way that I consider this to be like an open SaaS, like we look at like the freemium tier is basically just the open source software. It's the exact same thing that we would run, for somebody, that we would manage for somebody, just available on Drupal.org, just like Open Social, right? Like you can go download the social distribution on Drupal.org and install Open Social. But if you just are a big company and you want it managed for you, you go to getopensocial.com and you buy it. So very similar paradigm for us, but really trying to, and this is kind of a pipe dream of mine, but like wanting to present to, again, the e-commerce industry at large, what it means to be an open SaaS. And that's been teased out by folks in the past, but it's like, for us, it's not just like open source as a service. because then all you're really doing is just trying to like monetize something that somebody used to run for free. For me, it's as much about like that contribution, that collaboration, that mutual influence on priorities, and continuous future development, as it is having the off ramp, right? So being able to commit to customers that any systems integration work we do to onboard a new client becomes open source software. And so insofar as they're dependent on us to manage their instance for them, well, guess what? Every new point release of Drupal Commerce will automatically be rolled out. We'll make sure that it's backwards compatible like we have been for the last couple of years. Maybe we have to get more intelligent about when those deployments happen, so that if we change a REST API interface, people have time to update their front end apps. But like really wanting to do something different. Like with this concept of open SaaS. So it's as much about collaboration as it is, vendor lock-in, off-ramp, open source underneath, et cetera, et cetera.
So with the SaaS platform and basically the API approach, right? Front end, you need a developer on the team to ingest the API and display it to the user, make calls back and forth. Any plans to have like something like a drop-in widget where somebody could just take a couple of key JavaScript components or something, drop them onto their site, and be able to use the back-end system kind of without the need of a developer on their team?
So it would be great if we could do that. But I feel like at that point, you'd be building a company like Snipcart, which is like a drop-in add to cart widget. But I have started developing and released an initial SDK that helps you do like your API requests for the cart part of the API platform. So like I mentioned before, the Commerce API module. So this is like a module on Drupal.org that enhances JSON API support for Drupal Commerce, and wrote a JavaScript SDK that ties into it. And my next goal is to add, because there's React, you have Vue, you have Elm, there's so many libraries. But the next step would be to write like a React SDK that implements React hooks for integrating with Drupal Commerce. I don't know if we could I would love to get to the point where there's like a drop-in widget, but there will be efforts made to help it be easier to integrate with if you are new to JavaScript or just new to the platform, but your favorite tools. To help ease that developer experience. And
the upside there, right, is it's pretty open source. So if somebody wanted to create a widget and like open source it in some way, they could potentially do that, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of look at it as like when you build a platform like this, you kind of need some of those killer apps that make it fly. I think nothing's okay. Let's see. Facebook had the like button, and then it had the connect button. Those were killer apps, right? Amazon's trying with Amazon Pay to make the remote wallet a killer app, but really Amazon.com is the killer app itself. We have one of our launch customers using embedded checkout, and I could see that becoming one of those kind of killer apps where it's like they're still responsible for using Matt's JavaScript SDK, integrating it into their existing front end to create add to cart buttons, shopping cart block in the header, that kind of thing. But the checkout form then is just an iframe embedded that we still serve, and that could become a killer app, right? Because with that, if you suddenly don't have to worry about checkout UX, you don't have to worry about payment gateway integration. Matt's made Matt and Yvonne and maybe Andras, I can't remember who all from our team's been involved. But certainly Matt and Yvonne Busic, our primary front-end developer, have made it so that like people using the embedded checkout form can literally style it however they want to, right? So it just looks like a native part of whatever site you're embedding it on. I mean, like that's close to being a drop-in widget, and I'm curious to see how that goes. I also think like I'd love to see, as a friend to many people that run their businesses on Square, I'd love to see somebody just create like a reference app for using Centaro Commerce to provide your online sales for Square stores. Something like that, where you use our Square module, you integrate, synchronize your inventory, and you have a reasonable user experience for online sales in Square instead of the the system they give you as a Square merchant. Like it's hard to predict like what will be the killer app.
But it sounds like the possibilities are endless, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something, you want to get involved, you guys have provided all of the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah. There's actually a gentleman in Portugal who found the Commerce API module when it was still a sandbox in my GitHub and not actually like solidified, and is currently using a web view to embed the Drupal Commerce checkout on top of like the regular APIs and doing recurring subscriptions through a native app on iOS and Android. So already like the Drupal community is doing what it does best. It's taking something and really implementing it. And I believe he's going to help provide some insight on how we can help support like native like web payments through mobile applications. And that'll be really exciting to see it grow that way.
So in that train of thought there, and coming to the end of our show here, I'm going to ask both of you to answer the same question here. How do you think Drupal is poised as an e-commerce platform in the broader market? And we'll go with Ryan first.
All right. We have to acknowledge our strengths as a platform, and content management is it, right? No other e-commerce application does content management also. And so we can't ignore or overlook the fact that Drupal still is unique in providing like fully integrated, robust content plus commerce. And I know people listening may think about like other systems like WordPress and WooCommerce, but if you think that serializing all of your content or your e-commerce data to a JSON blob in the post table is a reasonable e-commerce solution, okay. But I think that we're a bit beyond that. And so what I see like in the broader e-commerce market is basically being able to tell people like, if you choose this software, whether or not you use Centaro Commerce as the e-commerce side, but I'm going to assume for a second that that's like us as a company succeeding, because that then results in continued investment in Drupal Commerce. But like as a company, you can launch 100 Drupal websites to market your product all over the world and have a single centralized, e-commerce platform on the back end that handles processing on fulfilling all of those orders. If you're using it as an API and then integrating it into your front end, you can do that across Drupal versions, right? You could have 100 legacy Drupal 7 sites and 50 new Drupal 8 sites in one Centaro Commerce service. Using the store module to define and configure each one of those stores, and then manage all of those orders through one backend. So I see it as that kind of like potential for organizations to basically create their own like private commerce cloud, right? Like an open source commerce cloud, where especially if they're using like the embedded checkout form, I mean, they could literally like launch and deploy 100 fully functioning e-commerce websites without having to even maintain the e-commerce application itself, but also without having to do any systems integration work or sacrifice any of the functionality that they're used to in Drupal as a content management tool. So I think that's what I see. From a pure features standpoint, obviously we're way behind the bigger competitors simply because, again, we had to keep rebuilding our core framework for the last decade. Now we don't have to anymore, so we'll start to catch up. But even so, I mean, you look at Magento, owned by Adobe. I mean, how many complete office buildings do they have full of developers just working on their platform in Ukraine? Like that's kind of like their whole like development hub, right? And we can't match that as a small team. So we're really just focusing, where we're strong, and then pushing where we know that Drupal has a unique competitive advantage, to try to just kind of even just get on the industry's radar. I mean, it's not easy. We go to IRCE in Chicago, not this year, but we are one very inconsequential 20 by 10 foot booth in a show floor of hundreds of booths and 15,000 people. I mean, it's going to be a challenge to really like penetrate that. But I think that using like the bigger Drupal story and then saying, oh, and by the way, you don't need that $500,000 demandware license anymore. Like, and pushing forward on that, like, will find us the purchase we need in these larger organizations who do have that, like, intersection of multis that makes us, like a perfect use case for them.
Matt, you got anything to add?
Yeah. So a lot of that, and kind of circling back to like when we were thinking about like being the center and like the central nervous system of your e-commerce, like in a weird correlation, I think of like Zapier, right? You have your Zaps where you connect various services. Well, you have your various front ends that are creating carts. And then your Centaro Commerce Hub is pushing your order data to your other systems, to your ERPs, to your marketing clouds. And I foresee us in the future, we are going to be that like hub of e-commerce where you don't need a platform that just processes transactions. You need it to integrate with your marketing clouds, all of your other services, and we will be that nimble platform that allows you to handle multilingual, multi-currency, and also all these various integrations incoming from different front ends, from mobile devices to point of sale systems, and that pushes it to all your various business systems. So like as we grow, I see a very bright future for us as that hub and everybody's e-commerce systems.
Do you foresee integrating with other e-commerce platforms? Like a lot of e-commerce clients, they have their own store, but they also want to have a selling channel on Amazon, for example, or eBay. And I think that, if you provide that hub, but also integrate with established channels, like
we actually have product feeds on the roadmap for the Centaro Commerce platform itself. So the idea being that, you could create the feed formatted. We'll probably target the simpler use cases first. So like feeding your product info to Google, just to make sure that it's all properly represented in Google Shopping. But yeah, I'd love to see that also include marketplace sales and the like. I think it's that's historically been like the domain of like channel marketing solutions and maybe PIMS. Although even with like the bigger product information management systems, the PIMS, it's kind of hit or miss who supports which marketplaces, for publishing third-party sellers as a third-party seller on those platforms. So like it's going to be customer funded, right? Whoever comes first, they're likely going to be the one, right? Looks like it's Amazon. But I think it's plenty reasonable, and I think frankly that if you're using Drupal Commerce, that you shouldn't need a PIM. You shouldn't. We already do more than most PIMs in terms of product catalog enrichment, translation, currency management, and so on. Like the only thing that's missing is that like marketplace publishing.
I have a couple of questions here I've written down. Maybe we could use rapid fire so I can get them through. First question is, have you considered doing any kind of partner program? I'm an individual developer or a small agency, want to do more commerce work, would love to work with you guys closer. Do you have any kind of partner program that you're looking at in the future? Or do you have one now?
We do have like companies that we consider agency partners. I would say that it's largely been informal. Formalizing that, I think, as part of this push towards Centaro Commerce, both for support and for the e-commerce platform, is definitely on the marketing roadmap. It's just a matter of bandwidth now.
Okay. Next question. I have a commerce website that I want to host somewhere. Obviously, Platform.sh is one place. Do you guys have certified or authorized other hosting places that you recommend putting a Drupal Commerce website on?
If Matt would unmute, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say we don't necessarily have like an authorized list, but I would say anywhere that you can host a Drupal site, you can host a Drupal Commerce site. Now, I would take into mind some that might be shared hosting sites to be careful on, because you're going to have obviously a more highly trafficked site that's going to have a lot of authenticated user traffic. So go for some of the non-shared hosting ones, but we don't have a certification process to use these hosting.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with Acquia, Pantheon, or Platform for sure. We have customers that we directly support on all three.
And last question. So when you think commerce, we're often thinking of buying and selling products. Are there other use cases to use the commerce structure and tools that aren't necessarily obvious in terms of buying and selling goods?
Matt, you should talk about the purchasable entity interface.
So when Commerce 2.x was first built, the core, everything revolves around this thing called the purchasable entity interface, which means that you can sell everything. Like I even made a sandbox module that took the node entity, swapped its class, and made it purchasable, so you could buy nodes. So you can kind of take anything and make it purchasable. But I know on a previous site, you mean like not necessarily like selling goods, but even just using the data model.
Right. Yeah.
Worked at a marketing firm, and one of the clients was they sold like pharmacy packaging devices, right? Like pill packers and all that stuff, and like the pill sorters. And we used the 1.x data model to build their catalog because it had everything we needed. They weren't selling online, but they needed a product catalog. They had pricing. They needed to be able to build a quote. I mean, just because you're not necessarily taking a payment transaction doesn't mean you don't have an e-commerce data model.
Right.
It's interesting, Matt. We just looked at a project, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, we can use views and solar and all this other stuff." And I'm like, "This is basically a commerce site without any payment functionality on it. So why wouldn't we just use commerce?" I think in other applications, like you think about like software licensing, membership renewal, and maintenance,
donations,
donations. Those are all great, I think, use cases for commerce. I'm trying to think, Pat, through the projects I've worked on in the past and how we've used commerce for other things than like, hey, here's a t-shirt.
Right.
Yeah, and to circle back, how I brought up that one customer that had 15 to 17 checkout flows, all the commerce data, they had products, and once the checkout completed, we deleted the order because it went to their offsite subscription system. So they really just, and they didn't even take payment through commerce; it was through their subscription system. So they just used product landing pages and orders and checkout to kick off their SaaS provisioning system.
It's basically like Drupal Commerce as a front end for another commerce system that maybe just has a really crummy user interface for customers, or has no content marketing potential.
They had no interface. Like it was strictly like sales. It was direct sales.
Yeah.
There was no direct sales. It was through a sales process. Drupal Commerce as a front end to their system allowed direct sales to customers.
Well, thanks for having us, guys.
Oh, this is me. Sorry, John. I see my name on the agenda. Oh, before we wrap up here, hey, thanks, guys, for coming. I want to point out that Design for Drupal has gone virtual this year. That's a conference in the Boston area this year. They're not having the 2-day in-person conference, but they're doing on June 10th, doing a keynote presentation by the project lead for Claro, the new admin theme. And Christina will be doing a keynote that day, followed by a 24-hour sprint, global sprint, to work on that theme. Also, they'll be doing monthly webinars for the next 12 months as part of keeping you in touch with some of the design aspects of Drupal. So go to designfordrupal.org to learn more information.
And I know that they are looking for digital sponsorships. Oomph actually just signed up as a digital sponsor. So if you're looking to expand your digital sponsorship, reach out.
If you have any questions or feedback on the show, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal or email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can always get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And we love those patrons. Thank you all who contribute on a monthly basis to cover the cost for producing this show. We appreciate it. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and push that big button that says become a patron.
Great. And wrapping up, Ryan, if people wanted to get a hold of you, where could they do so?
as of this week, I finally have activated the regular contact form on Centaro.io. That's 2 R's. So going to Centaro.io is good, or just emailing me, Ryan@Centaro.io.
Cool. Matt, where can people find you?
On Twitter, I've got @NMDMatt, or reach out to me on the Centaro website as well, or matt@Centaro.io.
Nick, how about you?
Reach me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
Steven?
At Stephen Cross on Twitter with a PH.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. You can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com. And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
See you guys.
Have a good one.
Adios.